House of Kuru, Book 1, Part 1, Chapter 2, The Thirsty King. There was once a benevolent king named Parikshit. Parikshit was a good king who looked after his subjects well and frequently inquired upon their well-being. From the lowest servants to the highest ministers, everyone were happy under his rule. The king had all the qualities of a great ruler, but for one vice. He was excessively fond of hunting. The king spent days and sometimes even weeks in pursuit of game. It just so happened that one day while hunting, the king got separated from his entourage of soldiers and spotters. Within a few hours, the king got lost. As fate would have it, the longer he searched for his entourage, the further he went into the forest. After what felt like hours, the king got very thirsty and started desperately to look for water. Unfortunately, he was unable to find a stream or a river or even a pond nearby. After hours of wandering, he came across a hermitage where the hermit, the sage Sringi, was deep in meditation atop an altar. The king tried his best to wake him from the lapse of his deep trance. Fully unconscious, the sage Sringi did not budge. The hungry, thirsty, and tired Raja Parikshit grew furious. He found a dead snake within the vicinity, and in a fit of indignation, the Raja flung the dead snake around the neck of the hermit and wrote, "Here is another Lord Shiva," in an attempt to mock him, and left the hermitage. Sometime later, the son of the hermit, Sringi, arrived at the hermitage from gathering water and food supplies and saw his father dressed as the god of destruction in a mocking manner. A tremendous anger filled his heart. Sringi flew into a rage and pronounced a terrible curse. "If my father's penance is true, if my service to my father is real, then the wretched person who slid this snake on the neck of my father should be bitten by the same creature of the same kind within a week, and may he be sent to the world of Yema, the underworld." As soon as he spoke the words, the father was jerked out of his penance as he realized suddenly all his austerities bore the wrong fruit. The father flung the snake from his neck and immediately understood everything. "Sringi, you silly boy, look at what you have done by the prowess of my penance. In a fit of anger, you have brought death to an innocent man who came with the intent of being fed. Go at once and tell him everything so that he may be prepared. A curse like this will certainly be inflicted upon him by my penances," said the sage. The boy hung his head low as he understood the gravity of his folly. Being accustomed to the forest, he was adept at tracking. Within a few hours, Sringi found the king tired and unconscious due to not having any water or food. He revived him with water, and the king thanked him profusely and mentioned, "Oh, thank you, O mysterious child, you have saved me from death by deprivation of water. A grave way for a king to die indeed. Do not thank me, O king, for your death is near," said Sringi. He then told him of the events pertaining to the aftermath of his departure from the hermitage. The king was devastated. He knew the prowess of an ascetic who spent his life in penances. "Alas, I came in search of water, and I found the messenger of death instead," he lamented. On seeing the king of the Kuru race in such a pitiable state, Sringi too felt the sharp pang of guilt burning in his heart. Within a few minutes, the youth also started lamenting. Fear not, O child, you have been a pawn of fate. My death was already written at the time of my birth, said the brave king. The king was then shown the way out of the forest and back to Indraprastha, his capital. As soon as he reached his palace, he informed the guards, the physicians, the naturalists within his kingdom to ward off snakes. He then spoke with his chief preceptor, the Raja Guru, and inquired what to do. The Raja Guru was Vaishampayana, and he mentioned, O Lord of the earth, a death curse by a renowned ascetic will certainly find its mark. If the curse is to be acted upon within the week, then I suggest you perform great deeds of good karma so that you may stand with your head held high in the presence of Yama. Vaishampayana was not a man to mince his words. He was straight to the point, but the king was still terrified of death and wanted to thwart it. The king's respect for Vaishampayana, however, was great, and hence he did as he was told. All beings in the city are to be fed and watered at the palace's expense for the duration of the week. Gifts of wealth are to be distributed to the poor. The entire Veda is to be chanted from the beginning to the end from this very moment, said the king, and Vaishampayana was pleased with his actions. Despite all his charitable deeds, the king was still unable to rest. The whole day he kept thinking about death. He was tormented by visions of vipers and adders and cobras. He would not even hug his dearest queen, thinking she was a python in disguise. The pain of the king was seen by all his subjects. The Raja Guru tried to console him, but to no avail. Man thinks he is invincible until the surety of death becomes apparent. Vaishampayana, I am young. I have no desire to die. I have a kingdom. I wish to enjoy it, he cried pitiably. There was nothing the royal preceptor could do. He felt powerless and worthless. The king was going to die, and there was nothing he could do. All the queens were lamenting the impending loss of their lord. The whole kingdom was in mourning. This was when Sukha, the son of the great Maharishi Veda Vyasa, was wandering in the city of Indraprastha. He was immediately fed and watered by the command of the king, as was everyone else, and was informed that for the remainder of the 7 days, the people of all members of Indraprastha will be fed on the palace's account. Sukha said to himself, As I have eaten the salt provided by this king, truly I am indebted to him. I will remove his fear of death, and in saying so he demanded to see the king. The greatness of the Maharishi Veda Vyasa was known all over the land, and so too was the greatness of his son. So the moment the messengers told him Sukha, the son of Vyasa, lay in wait for the King Parikshit ran to meet him. Come, O mighty sage, come here. I will tell you my tale of woe, and you can stand beside me in lamentation, for I have been cursed to death within the week, and nothing can be done. I am at death's door. I will be kneeling before the Lord Yama within a week, O sage, lamented the king. So saying, he dissolved into piteous tears, and all the queens in the king's entourage, and even the ministers, soon followed suit. There was unstoppable lamentation all over the palace. I will do no such thing, O king, roared the great son of Vyasa. You are the defender of the people, one who instills courage in the hearts of men. You are the chastisers of foes. You are the Parantapa, the scourge of enemies of the Bharata lineage, the scion of the Kuru clan. It does not behoveth thee to give in to such pathetic lamentation. Death is certain for all creatures in this creation. Even the God of creation himself will face death. Now listen to me, and I will remove the fear and pain of death from thee, O king. I will impart to you the sacred knowledge of Narayana, the Bhagavata Purana. One who hears this, the secret of the Bhagavata Purana, will never fear death. He will never argue with Yama, and he will go to the abode of Mahavishnu. He will be with Mahavishnu for all eternity. Therefore, listen, O scion of the Kuru lineage. Listen to the sacred tales of Narayana and free yourself from the mundane bonds of death and birth. Establish yourself fully on the glory of Narayana, and Narayana will protect you from rebirth. So, the great son of the Maharishi Vedavyasa, Sukadeva, told the story of the Bhagavata Purana to the King Parikshit for the remainder of 6 nights and 7 days. The great Sukadeva paused only to quench his thirst, but spoke non-stop, and the great Raja Parikshit listened intently without his attention wavering for even a moment. The king was so engrossed in the tale of the Bhagavata Purana that he forgot all about the pain of death. He was so intensely imbibed in the tales told in the beautiful voice of Sukadeva that the king completely forgot about his impending doom. The beautiful tale of Bhagavata Purana, when told with absolute devotion to Mahavishnu, burns all sins and frees the soul to the world of Vaikunta, where the great god Mahavishnu resides. The king grew stronger by will day by day, listening to the tale of Narayana by the great Sukadeva. Finally, the 6th day came to an end, and the dreaded 7th day arrived. The day was spent in listening to the glories and pastimes of Narayana in the Bhagavata Purana by the king. Unfortunately, there was a snake by the name of Takshaka. The grandfather of King Parikshit was a great warrior by the name of Arjuna. Arjuna was known for his great prowess with the bow and arrow. Sadly, in one instance, while protecting an old man from the wrath of Indra, Arjuna became the reason for an entire forest which was burned down. Takshaka's entire family was killed by the fire which engulfed the forest, but Takshaka, who was an adder, managed to flee the forest flames. Takshaka vowed to kill hero Arjuna, but to Takshaka's bad luck, Arjuna was protected by the might of the god incarnate Mahavishnu in his avatara as Lord Krishna. Takshaka was unable to kill either Arjuna nor his son, but his thirst for vengeance was unabated. He knew that the curse of the hermit was the best way to take vengeance on the Kuru lineage. He knew that killing Arjuna's grandson was the only way to quench his thirst for revenge. So he waited until the 7th day arrived. He hid himself in a pile of fruits meant for the king, and being bottle green in color, he camouflaged himself perfectly in a pile of green grapes. As fate would have it, as soon as dusk set in, the 7th day was culminated. The basket of fruits was sent to the king, Raja Parikshit. Takshaka made himself completely invisible amongst the greenest grapes within the basket. He was so camouflaged that no one could tell the grape or Takshaka apart. Takshaka primed his fangs with poison. He was going to have his vengeance on Arjuna and the whole Kuru lineage. He could not forget the forest fire. The Khandava forest had burned down his entire family, and this was the most befitting punishment, he convinced himself. He curled up within the grapes. The sage Sukadeva had finished his story on the Bhagavata Purana. The king was about to break his fast with some fruit. Fate orchestrated that he grabbed the greenest of the grapes, and as he went down to grab it, Takshaka was lying in wait. As soon as the sun set, Takshaka flung himself around the neck of the Raja and delivered the final blow. The king hurled the fruit basket, and there was chaos in the bedchamber of the king. Takshaka slipped away through the hole in a window. while all the queens scrambled in a pathetic attempt to save the king's life. The court physicians were all called to extract the venom, but alas, the king breathed his last while uttering the holy name Narayana. Despite the pandemonium, a wide smile appeared on the king's face. The smile stretched from his left ear to right. He was at peace. He had reached the abode of Mahavishnu. By the grace of the mighty son of Vyasa, he had understood the secret of Narayana.